of our community can really enjoy and hear. But David, thank you again. I know it's one of my favorite things too, and I love when we get to spend time talking about the products. And today I know will be really fun and exciting. I know many look forward to these live Q&As with you.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So David, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about X49 first, being our newest product. And, you know, there are a lot of benefits that we've shared. There really is a synergistic product that's focused on stem cell activation to promote performance, strength, stamina, cardiovascular system support, muscle soreness, recovery. But the thing I'm really excited to talk a little bit about with you today is how it supports fat loss. Because I don't know about you or anyone on the call, but summer's just around the corner. Convention's just around the corner. And I have loved the results I've had already from this product. But if you're okay with that, I'd like to kind of focus in a little bit on that today. Would that work for you, David?
Absolutely. Let's do it. So,
awesome.
You know, I'd say the first thing with X49, we know that it was designed to elevate the peptide AHKcu. And this is the daughter peptide from X39 or GHKcu. So when you look at the 40 or 50 years of research into GHK from X39, what we find is that there's research in wound healing, stem cell activity, cognition, energy metabolism, antioxidant activity, anti-inflammatory activity. So there is a wealth of information to draw on with GHK. With AHK, that was not really the case. And we had to formulate some concepts and hypothesis about how X49 might work in the body by looking at the biochemistry. So let me give you an idea about what I mean here so we can dig into some of the details. This is a website where they have different types of peptides for sale, and you can get AHK by injection. It's for experimental use. You can see that it's $200. So the patches are definitely a superior way, not only by price, but also effectiveness in terms of elevating your AHK. But we're going to see some things here is that AHK has been studied really broadly for reduction in wrinkles and hair loss, meaning that most of the focus has looked at the cosmetic application of AHK. So this is exciting because even though we haven't really talked about it, we would expect people that are using X49 to experience a reduction in lines and wrinkles, and some people might even experience hair growth. Now, we don't make that claim. In fact, that's a medical claim. And if people were specifically interested in the benefit of hair growth, I'd recommend that they speak with their doctor and look into microneedling. I'd actually spoken with a hair loss specialist about this, and he recommended that people get microneedling if they're going to use X49. And I am getting to your question, by the way. I just wanted to form a background here. And as you can see, if you look it up, it's not going to be any secret. There are many, many studies that are focusing in on this peptide, on its use in hair growth. Even Dr. Lauren Picard, who was the discoverer of GHK and later AHK, had found that AHK is actually as effective as the drug minoxidil in regrowing hair under the right conditions. But again, that's not a claim we make because we haven't done the studies. So with that in mind, when we are looking at how can we build muscle, burn body fat, and do that with X49, there was not any existing literature that would have even indicated that this was possible. So this is where the biochemistry comes in, and we look at what the peptide is made of. It's 3 amino acid peptide. We look at alanine metabolism, and this would suggest that we would see effects in the muscle, the heart, and in the brain. And in our research, that's exactly what we found. So if we go back and we look at, this is from the presentation that I did at the November convention. I think we can just simply show this here, and I'm going to come back to this PowerPoint. What was so interesting about the body scans that we did in the study with people using X49 is that we did not put them on any type of special diet. Now, Emily, as you know, Lifewave never recommends a patch without the foundation, right? We definitely recommend that people get proper diet, proper exercise, proper rest, hydration, supplement where necessary. But in this study, we had the participants doing mild exercise, no special diet, and yet we saw that after a period of 2 months, their strength more than doubled, and there was, in fact, a reduction in body fat. These are mechanisms that we're still exploring, by the way, because it was, I would say the loss in body fat was an unexpected outcome. We had expected to see an increase in strength and stamina. We had expected to see an increase in muscle growth. But this dramatic of loss in body fat was something that we didn't expect.
That's pretty amazing to me. I know when we were initially preparing for the launch of X49, you were sharing some of these things with us. I, for one, was like, oh, that's interesting, but I didn't really expect to see that for myself. And so I know that myself and many others have seen not only the help with the muscles and the recovery, but also that body fat loss. Do we really know exactly why that's happening? I know you just shared a little bit about the peptide, but why is that happening?
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts with this, right? So first you have to deal with the math of losing body fat, right? Because there's a lot of energy that is stored in body fat. And there's a couple ways of doing this. So the most common way is calorie deficit, and that was not the case in this study. So we didn't ask participants to reduce the amount of food that they were eating. There's an interesting phenomena with swimmers, right? There was an analysis done on Michael Phelps and other Olympic swimmers, and they were consuming massive amounts of calories, up to 10,000 calories per day.
Wow.
And we know that people that are training at that level are in a swimming pool 3-4 hours a day or even longer. But even that amount of exercise could not explain why the swimmers were losing and maintaining their weight. We would have expected them to have gained a lot of body fat. But what happened in this case was that the temperature of the water was below body temperature. The water was fairly cold. So in order for the body to keep warm, it had to burn extra calories to bring the body temperature up. And this is what accounted for the weight loss or not losing any weight in the face of an extraordinary amount of calories. So the body has a number of interesting mechanisms that are not altogether so obvious. So in other words, we would not attribute the loss in body fat to the amount of exercise they were doing. There was no calorie deficit. There could be an improvement in thyroid activity. That certainly would be not out of the question. So these are some things to investigate still, before we can really be definitive. But if I were to form a hypothesis at this point in time, I would say that we're seeing improved thyroid activity.
Okay. Well, that's pretty exciting because I know, like I said, summer's coming. So many of us are looking for maybe something we can add to our diet that we're already having in place and the exercise, and maybe just have a boost in some of the results that we're experiencing. So
Yeah, with you made a good point. With summer coming up and people wanting to reduce levels of body fat in the body, I would definitely encourage people to examine their diet. I know this is an old message, but it's true. We want to reduce the number of refined carbohydrates. We want to reduce refined sugar, get as much of that out of the diet as possible, get a low carbohydrate, balanced diet between proteins and healthy fats, and include as much exercise as possible during the week. And at convention, we're going to be going through this in quite a bit of detail. And even if someone is busy like us, they're working a lot, they're traveling a lot, you can definitely get in time for enough exercise to stay in shape. And we'll go through this in detail at convention.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to convention. For those of you who haven't decided if you're going to be attending in person or virtually, I would encourage you because, again, we have this awesome product here, X49, but if you pair it with something, just imagine what results you can have. Pair it with like a great regimen. I'm excited, David. Can't wait.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I would love to spend more time on X49, but I know everyone is really, really eager to ask you some questions. And, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty on our side. So members won't be able to actually ask the questions auditory or with their voice. I would encourage everyone to type your questions into the question and answer section, and I will ask those questions of David myself. So I do apologize for that technical difficulty. However, I'm really excited for us to get some of these questions answered. So David, are you okay if we shift over to the Q&A?
Well, let's go ahead and do it. And want to thank everyone for being here. I just saw that we're over 900 people on the call, so it kind of doesn't surprise me. We might have an issue going to open mics on this. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Perfect. All right. So the first question I have here is from Jane, and she just says, thank you so much for this amazing webinar. But my question for anyone who is not a big meat eater, how many grams of protein should one have daily to get the maximum results while using X49?
Wow. So this is an interesting question. So I'm going to assume that the person is doing some type of resistance training. So when we're talking about building muscle and reducing body fat, there has to be a stimulus there. And the stimulus should be some type of resistance training. I know, Emily, you and I, we love weightlifting. You might be more extreme than me at this point. I know you're really pretty hardcore on your weightlifting. Or it can be calisthenics, could be push-ups, could be isometric exercise. But you have to have some type of resistance training. Preferably, the resistance training, you're going to failure. And there's lots of ways of doing this. Again, I'm going to address this in the August convention, but you could use a very lightweight and you could do high repetition to failure. The clinical studies show that you can actually get muscle hypertrophy with this. Or most people prefer to use a little bit heavier weight, lower repetition, but of course there's higher potential for injury there. But suffice it to say, you've got to have the exercise there first. Okay, now once that's in place, what we need to think about is how do we, the question is a little bit more complicated than simply how many grams of protein do you take per day, because we have to balance this out by age and other factors. So let's first look at how you turn on muscle protein synthesis. This is almost exclusively done by the amino acid leucine. So leucine is one of the branch chain amino acids. So it's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And a typical dose might be 4 to 5 grams of the branch chain amino acids with 2.5 grams of leucine. Now, that would be fine for people up until the age of about 35 or 40. But as we get older, we need to have more leucine to turn on muscle protein synthesis. So could be as high as 3 or 4 grams of leucine. So if someone is, let's say, over the age of 50 and they want to build muscle, I'd want to make sure that with whatever protein they're consuming, they're getting at least 3 to 4 grams of leucine. Okay, that would be the first thing. The next thing is if a person's goal is to get tone and keep the muscle they have, the protein consumption is going to be very different than if a person is trying to bulk and put on a lot of muscle. And of course, there's a tremendous amount of information about this, and people have different opinions about it. Keep in mind that Bill Pearl, who I had the good fortune of meeting many years ago, who was a Mr. World winner and a consultant to NASA, he won the Mr. World competition consuming 80 to 90 grams of protein per day. Now that's really kind of crazy when you consider that in the Mr. Olympia competition, they're consumed between 450 and 500 grams of protein per day. So I would say if it was a 200-pound man, 200 grams of protein per day is a good number to shoot for if you're really trying to bulk and gain a lot of muscle. 150 grams or so is probably okay. So if you wanted to use 1 gram per pound of body weight, it may be a little overkill, but you definitely have enough protein at that point. It's also, since I've done this many times, if you're bulking to put on a lot of muscle, you divide up that protein amongst meals. You know, you don't try to take it all at once. So you might be getting 40 grams of protein at any meal. So that means you'd have 5 meals per day, or it would be 3 meals and 2 protein shakes, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love that. I know there is a lot of, like you said, a lot of different opinions about how best to support building your muscle and how much protein. So there's a lot of great stuff out there, but thank you for that advice, David. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's really very, very generalized, and but at least it gives people a little bit of a start.
Absolutely. So this next question comes from Eileen, and she says, where should I wear the X49 if I'm also wearing the X39? Thank you.
Okay, so in our studies, both of those patches were used during the day. And when we used them in combination, the X39 was placed behind the neck with the X49 below the belly button. Now, I would say that there's still a lot to learn about this. For example, we haven't had a study where we were applying the X49 patches in the evening and seeing would there be a better effect. We did see a great effect with the patch being used during the day, but using it during at night might be an option for some people. There's also X49 is what we would refer to as a positive patch. So this means it could be placed just about anywhere on the midline or the right side of the body. AHK is going to tend to have a relaxing effect on the body. So if someone had a sore back, they might find that they could place X49 on the lower back, and that could be okay. But for X39 and X49, almost anywhere you apply it on the body, it's going to work just fine.
Perfect. I love when you share that, because I know a lot of people worry sometimes. They just want to make sure I put it in the right spot so I get the best benefit. And I love that really we do have the clinicals that show specific placement, but they work pretty much everywhere. That's awesome. Yep. Okay, I have a question here from, it looks like Nan. Would you ask him, this is for you, at some point about hot flashes and wearing X49, anything post-menopausal, please? I've tried wearing it on the SP6 on the right side, in the past, but I'm still getting hot flashes. Any suggestions?
Oh, yes. So we can say anecdotally that women that have experienced hot flashes are using our carnosine patch at the spleen 6 point on the left ankle. So that spleen 6 point connects neurologically to the hypothalamus, and hypothalamus is going to regulate hormones as well as body temperature, and carnosine also tends to sedate the body. So I'd recommend if she would like to look at patches, try the carnosine patch on the left spleen 6 point. That would be one option. There's certainly a number of herbs that have been used traditionally to help women with hot flashes, such as Dong Quai and Vitex, and those are very, very popular for helping to regulate hormones. I am also going to have a session on where I'm going to speak about hormones and some natural alternatives at the August convention. So that's a little tease for some things that we'll be talking about then.
Awesome. Thank you for that. This next question comes from Jean-Marie, and the question is, what is the best patching placement for neuropathy of hands and feet, using X39 and glutathione currently, but not having much success?
Okay, so I'm not a medical doctor, and we don't give medical advice here. We can give some recommendations about what you might want to speak with your medical doctor about. So with that disclaimer out of the way, we actually have quite a bit of information concerning neuropathy. As a matter of fact, we spent quite a few years developing pulsed electromagnetic field therapy that was able to reverse both diabetic and idiopathic neuropathy. And as a result, I have my name on a couple dozen patents dealing with that. So with anyone that's going through neuropathy, based on that experience, I'd recommend a few things. First thing is you have to get your blood sugar under control. If it's idiopathic neuropathy, this may or may not help, but definitely for diabetic neuropathy, when the blood sugar gets too high, it's going to destroy the nerves. So there's a few ways of doing that. First thing, you can elevate your glutathione levels. And, given that we're out of the pandemic, I might still recommend that people take a supplement of NAC, N-acetylcysteine. It's the precursor to glutathione, and it would help to ensure you're getting enough cysteine, which is an amino acid, in your diet to support healthy glutathione. And this also helps to give you some protection against COVID. Glutathione does help to move sugar through the body and regulate blood sugar. That'd be the first thing. Secondly, I'd recommend a supplement of alpha lipoic acid. And for those trying to lose a little extra body fat, insulin sensitivity is a big deal. So I'd even recommend maybe for a cycle during the summer, people take 300 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid 3 or 4 times per day. And especially for someone with neuropathy, this is going to help get their blood sugar under control. Even for a type 1 diabetic, this could reduce their need for insulin by over 60%. So this is a big deal. So that would be the first thing. Second thing, I'd want to make sure that they have a diet that's rich in protein, healthy fat, and copper. So if they're using X39 and not having much success, I'd want to look at their diet, make sure they're getting enough copper in their diet. If not, take a supplement, 2.5 milligrams of copper glycinate daily. Next, I would recommend that they place the Lifewave patches on the bottom of their feet. This would be at the kidney 1 point, or they can try placing them on the top of the feet at an acupuncture point called stomach 40. So if you have, I'll have to show it like this. If you have your foot, right, And this would be stomach 40, right up there. So I'd recommend that they try that, white on right, tan on left. And then they use X39, let's say, behind the neck. And if there's a point of pain on the feet, I'd recommend putting the Eon patch there. So what happens in neuropathy, in arthritis, in Parkinson's disease, when there's pain, the body can get overwhelmed with inflammation, and the stem cells have a more difficult time repairing the damaged tissue. So if you've tried X39 and you haven't gotten the results that you want, take an Eon patch, put it on the point of pain, use that with X39, you'll probably find that the results will be better. So those are just some of the things. And I'd also recommend, by the way, for neuropathy, magnetic field therapy. We certainly found in our studies that it works extremely well.
Perfect. You know, David, I once heard you speak about X39 and Eon and how they're such a great complement just because of the reduction of inflammation. Can you speak a little bit on that? Because I know I've had a few questions of that recently at events, just like why is it so important to wear those together, and how can the Eon actually aid the effectiveness of X39 from the inflammation standpoint?
Yeah. So there's going to be people that that are asking questions about protocols for treating all different kinds of disease. So this answer actually is going to help them understand why these two products specifically are so helpful. When there is an injury in the body, it's important to understand exactly the cycle, the biochemical cycle that is going on. So when initially there's an injury in the body, there is going to be an increase in oxidative stress and oxidative chemicals. This doesn't sound like a good thing, but it's actually a great thing because those oxidative chemicals, they help to suppress infection. So somebody bangs their knee, maybe they have an open wound, oxidative radicals come in and they suppress infection. They also act as signaling molecules to bring in inflammation. The inflammation is going to tear down the damaged tissue, and then the inflammation acts as signaling molecules for the stem cells. So this is the way that it works, and it works extremely well. But as we age, that begins to break down, and the oxidative and inflammatory stress hang around longer than it should. The antioxidant system in the body becomes diminished with age, and now the stem cells get damaged by the oxidative and inflammatory stress. So if we want to try to get our bodies to work as they did when we were younger, we need to do a few things. First, we need to elevate our antioxidants to help protect the cells. And we can do that in a number of ways, through our diet, supplementation, the glutathione patch. And then what Eon does is it acts as a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory. It will elevate a peptide in the primitive immune system, and this causes an increase in the antioxidant SOD. So SOD and glutathione are two of the most powerful antioxidants in the body. So the SOD in turn will reduce inflammatory cytokines, C-reactive proteins, homocysteine, fibrinogen. So it will reduce a very, very broad spectrum of different inflammatory markers. So as a result, you take an injury, you apply Eon, and it could be also systemic. So if someone has arthritis, arthritic pain, you could just apply Eon below the belly button or on top of the belly button if it's an emergency. This will start to, within 20 minutes, bring down the inflammatory levels. And now X39, when it's mobilizing stem cells, those stem cells can go in there and repair the damaged tissue.
Oh, that's so perfect. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's just an important piece for people to understand. There's a question right here from, I think it's Hallie. And how long does it take to see results? And so I think maybe that's part of it. Can you answer the question? How long does it
Yeah.
typically take for people? And with what you just shared, can that actually speed it up?
Yeah, so we did some studies with EEG looking at people over the age of 50, and we were looking at brain cognition and brain coherence. And we wanted to address the question. So this really is going to depend on age, pre-existing health conditions, diet, quality of sleep. This is why we stress these things. So if someone has a perfect diet, they're exercising regularly, and they're not sleeping, you can expect that pretty much their entire life is going to be messed up, right? So we have to have all of those things in place. So results with X39 are going to vary pretty widely based on that. So if someone is, let's say, over the age of 60 or even 70, and they're taking relatively good care of themselves, they can respond within, let's say, 7 days to 3 weeks with some pretty dramatic effects with X39. We've seen this in our brain scans and in our blood studies. Also, if someone's a little bit older and they're dealing with a number of different health conditions, the body will tend to prioritize what gets fixed first. I know this happened with a number of our members. They said, you know, I used X39, I had this pain in my knee, nothing was going on, why didn't it work? And then I realized that my back pain was gone and that the stem cells were fixing my back first before anything else. So the body is a way of prioritizing what's going to get fixed first. So I would encourage people, again, make sure they have proper diet, they have proper exercise and rest, they're getting enough water, not drinking too much alcohol, preferably not smoking, not using pharmaceutical drugs unless necessary. They get all of those things in place, and then they can start to really optimize the benefits that they're going to get from our products.
Perfect. I love what you shared about how the body will prioritize. And I think that's super important for everyone to understand. Your body knows what needs first, even if you want your knee to feel better faster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know, David, with all of the research and all of the studies that have been done, a majority of those, if not all, are in our back office under the science section of our website as well, in the back office. Tell us, though, when it comes to X49 specifically, are there still any ongoing research studies, and has everything been published at this point on the website?
No, we haven't, as a matter of fact, and this was because of the pandemic. So the pandemic really had a dramatic negative effect on our ability to get research done. Some research labs had to completely shut down during the pandemic, and we weren't able to get things done. And then even now, many people, even after COVID has really passed, people are scared about coming into clinics for participating in clinical research. So this has really been a struggle for us. We have gotten blood data back on X49. We're doing the final statistics on that, but we did, of course, get statistical significance that X49 elevates AHKcu. We have a study that we did with only men showing improvements in strength and stamina. We have a women's study I'm really excited about that's finished up, where we showed that X49 could increase bone density. I know we're still running statistics on that, but that looks really, really great. We have a pilot study that we've done on the use of X49 to reduce the impact of man-made radiation like 5G. We also have a cognition study that we've done that we're waiting to finish up. The clinic that's doing that just opened back up again. And that's going to look at what benefits people could experience with X49 in terms of overall health of the brain and cognition. So there's actually many studies that we funded with X49. None of them are posted in the back office yet, but we're hoping, this year to catch up now that the pandemic has passed us.
Well, I know that that's such a huge priority for you, David, is that we do have the science behind what we say. And so I know everyone will be excited when we get those additional studies posted. And just so everyone knows, we'll definitely let you know once those studies are on the website, and we'll let you know through our normal channels so you can reference all of those. So looks like we have time for a few more questions, David. I have one from Tina. Is it easier for men than for women to lose weight with X49?
Well, not necessarily. Both men and women are certainly going to have their own challenges. I thought, maybe I'll share this just really quick, Emily.
Yeah.
We are going to be, let me see if it's over here. Yeah, here we go. We're going to be posting this to social media later, but this is information on a study that just came out showing that here's some of the challenges and the confusion, that it was found that men actually get, I'll show you over here. Men found that the study found that evening exercise was more effective for men than morning routines, but for women, it varies. So to further complicate how you can get the best results, yeah, I would still go back and I would look at some basics for women. For both men and women, it's really going to come down to hormone levels. And for men, I would say it's definitely easier because we have naturally high testosterone levels, right? 10 times, 20 times higher than women. And so that women are built to hold a certain amount of body fat. And this is all understandable because, especially when women are pregnant, they're going to start to store body fat. And this is so that they can breastfeed, because breastfeeding takes an enormous amount of calories. So if women don't breastfeed after pregnancy, it actually makes it a little bit more difficult for them to lose weight. But in any case, I would advise that if a woman was having difficulty losing weight, that she go to her doctor, get her iodine levels checked. Here in the United States and other places, there's definitely deficiencies of iodine. Not necessarily in Japan, but certainly in other parts of the world, US and Europe. I wouldn't start taking iodine unless I was tested first, because there can be some problems with that. But adding some iodine to the diet can definitely be helpful and get the levels of T3 and T4. Adrenal glands have a lot to do with it as well. So there's a number of nutrients like acetyl L-carnitine and pantothenic acid, which can help to reduce stress on the adrenals. Once you reduce stress and get the cortisol levels in line, then the body can start to release body fat and make exercise a little bit more efficient. There's also tools like intermittent fasting, which is something that I've practiced for many years now, and I love it. Women have to practice intermittent fasting a little differently than men, though. Men can do it 7 days a week, no problem at all, but women, not so much, more like every other day. Otherwise, it's a little bit too stressful for a woman on her metabolism. So yeah, I would say that women definitely have a little bit more are a little bit more at a disadvantage than men, but certainly there's many women that are in outstanding physical shape. So certainly it can be done.
Well, thank you on that. I know that there is a lot of things that go into the weight loss situation. And there are a lot of comments here of people asking specifically when it comes to menopause and things like that. And so I'm sure that all of those factors come into play. But we do know, based on the study that you did, that X49 can help with body fat loss, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that it would be a fantastic aid. One thing I've noticed on myself with X49 is that it allows me, even with my busy schedule and I exercise regularly, it allows me to maintain my muscle mass. If I go for a week or two without exercise because of travel, which is pretty rare, I notice that I don't lose that muscle anymore. Whereas before I would yo-yo a lot, and I tend to maintain my strength and muscle mass much easier with X49.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, David. I was just in Florida for an event with Lifewave and didn't get to do much weight training while I was there. So basically I went about a week without weight training, which killed me, right? But when I came back, I was able to still bench press at like 105 and everything felt great. And I was like, okay, I think you're right. It must have been the X49. That's awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I have a couple more questions here. I know we're getting closer to the end of our time, but are we okay? All right. Okay.
Absolutely.
So Miss Patricia is saying, can you talk to us a little bit about X39 and really all the patches and the ages that they can be applied to? I think she's asking, is it okay for kids to use it, or are there any that we should be mindful of?
Yeah. So when we do our studies, they're generally on people over the age of 18. And because we do focus on age reversal, many people, when we do studies, those studies are people 40, 50 years and above. Now, that said, we certainly have members that have used the patches on children, and the general guidance that we've given is that those children should be old enough to talk where they can communicate any adverse events. So what would an adverse event be? About 1 in 10,000 people are allergic to the adhesive. So we use a hypoallergenic adhesive, medical grade, but still 1 in 10,000 people are allergic. So if you applied it to a child and they found that they were getting a reaction, it was itchy, they have to be old enough where they can communicate that and take that off. If anyone has a lot of toxins like mercury poisoning, then you apply a patch like the glutathione patch and they could get nauseous or an upset stomach or fatigue or a headache. And again, the child should be old enough to communicate that. So we generally would recommend child be 5, 6, 7 years old before you apply the patches. Of course, again, I'm not a medical doctor, so this would be, with doctor's permission.
Perfect. I have a question here from Heidi, and she says, why is it that we recommend pregnant or nursing individuals avoid patching? I don't know that we necessarily say that, but can you speak to that a little bit, David, about pregnant or nursing individuals?
Sure. Well, there's several reasons for it. First, because we don't do any clinical studies with women that are pregnant or nursing. While we believe the patches to be safe, we don't know whether or not this would cause any complications for a woman that's pregnant. So we'd have to say you can't wear them. Now, there are certain points on the body that will induce labor. I haven't looked at this for quite some time now. But if you were to mistakenly apply patches to a point, I think it's on the lower back, it's not points that we recommend in our instructions, by the way. It could, if a woman was really late in her pregnancy, induce birth, right? Not aware that that's ever happened, but again, this is just a precaution. So we would have to recommend that a woman that is pregnant not use the patches. There's a little bit too much uncertainty there.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's always good to consult our physicians, right, in that sort of situation as well. I know you often say that, David.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so this is from Anna, and she said, aside from what have been used in clinical studies, what are the patch placements that would give our body more benefits while using X49?
Well, more benefits is a relative term, right?
Yeah.
What I would say is that first, when using a product like X49 or any of the patches, make sure that you have everything in your diet to make that peptide. So in the case of X49, the critical amino acid would be alanine. Now, alanine is found in vegetarian sources, but it's principally found in meat and dairy products, principally in meat. Now, the good news is that beta alanine is available commercially. You can get it, in vitamin stores, and it's very, very inexpensive. So if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you don't think you're getting enough alanine in your diet, take a beta alanine supplement. And so beta alanine is amino acid that will help support your AHK levels. And again, I also recommend that you have enough copper in your diet. If you don't like liver, or if you're not having enough dark chocolate, then take a copper supplement. Other than that, when we do our blood studies, we find that really no matter where you put the patch, the blood levels get elevated. Now, there is a bioelectrical effect with all of the patches, meaning that let's say that you apply the patch to the temple, the effect is going to be different than if you apply the patch, let's say, to the top of the foot. You're still going to elevate the peptide, but the effect would be more intense at where you apply the patch. That's generally what we find. So those are some things to keep in mind. So maybe if a good way to say that then is if someone had a torn muscle and they were looking to maybe see if they could use X49 to facilitate the healing, they could try applying the patch over the injury site. It may or may not make any difference as compared to applying it on the back of the neck, but that's certainly something someone could try.
Perfect. So this is a question that I actually received in Florida while I was recently there, and it relates to the time of year that we're kind of heading into here, especially in the United States, and it has to do with heat and transport of the patches. So we know that the patches are activated by body heat or heat. So can you speak to us a little bit about, let's say I had the patches shipped to me, they may sit in a mailbox for a little bit, or they've been on a truck. Are my patches still going to work? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we actually have done those studies. And what we do is we'll ship products and we put a temperature monitor in them. It's a computer chip. And then we can take the temperature monitor and we can put it into the computer. And then we can see, it's a data logger. We can see the temperature that it was exposed to throughout the entire trip. We then take the patches and we put them into a piece of equipment called an FTIR. It stands for Fourier Transform Infrared, and we can validate whether or not the patches are still emitting and reflecting light. So many, many years ago, back in 2005, when we started to ship into Florida and Arizona, I added stabilizers into the formula to protect the patches during shipment. And as evidence of this, we ship patches, and of course we have offices in Taiwan, Malaysia, the Philippines, where it's hot there all the time, and the patches consistently work. So it's definitely not an issue, but I would absolutely keep the patches stored at room temperature and not subject them to more heat than necessary.
Perfect. Oh, that's such a great answer, David. I know a lot of people have that on their minds right now. So that is really, really helpful. I know we're pretty much out of time. I think we maybe have room for 2 more questions. Let's see. Okay. This is a great one. So this is from Christopher. What benefits does X49 have on the heart? Is it similar to carnosine?
That's a fantastic question. So of course, carnosine, we have studies showing that it's good for the heart, the muscle, and the brain. There's a number of studies there I recommend people take a look at. What's so interesting about X49 and AHK is that it elevates VEGF. And as a matter of fact, we can go back over here. This was the website Peptide Sciences that we were looking at before, where it's talking about vascular endothelial cells. So in other words, what the research has shown, and here it is over here, that AHK can elevate VEGF. VEGF, by the way, is released by stem cells. And when we were first doing our stem cell research at the National University of Ireland, we were looking at what are called mesenchymal stem cells and the VEGF growth factor. So essentially what this means, what we could expect from elevating AHK is that we would see improvements in overall cardiovascular health as a result of AHK elevating VEGF. So this is tricky in the sense that we can't make any medical claims. Our products are wellness products. And this kind of gets a little bit on the edge of making a medical claim. So I'll let people draw their own conclusion. But this would be to say that we could expect, and we have seen in our study that we did, that X49 will in fact significantly improve stamina. So that infers that there is an improvement in the cardiovascular system. And based on the chemistry, we could say that's because of VEGF. So if people want to research that, they can find out what else it does.
Perfect. Okay, this last one is kind of a hodgepodge. There's been a lot of comments and questions around this. So,
Okay.
So I'm just going to try and succinctly say what a few people are asking. So is there ever a time or an individual that shouldn't be using the patches, meaning chemo, organ transplants, pacemakers? We already talked about women that are pregnant or nursing. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I would say if someone's had an organ transplant, again, we simply don't know if it would be okay. When someone's had an organ transplant and they're put on immunosuppressive drugs, this could be a problem because our patches are improving and supporting the health of the immune system. So that could be a problem. We have had people who have told us anecdotally they used the patches when they had an organ transplant and they did very well. But that's completely anecdotal, and at some point in the future, maybe we'll do a study. But for the moment, I'd say if someone had an organ transplant, they should speak with their doctor and ask them, hey, is it okay if I elevate my copper peptide levels? See what the doctor says. The other thing would be with chemo. Anyone that's going through that, they definitely need to work with their oncologist. So oncologists generally don't like antioxidants. They don't like glutathione because there's literature that shows that if you elevate your glutathione levels, you're going to protect your healthy cells and the cancer cells. I'm not so sure about that, but in any case, an oncologist doesn't want someone using antioxidants. So the general strategy, if someone's going to work with their doctor, would be to apply the patches post chemo for assisting in recovery, improving energy levels, and reducing the symptoms of the chemo. So, for example, a good combination could be the energy patches and glutathione immediately after chemo. That'll help to detox the chemo, make it a little bit safer, and the energy patches on the wrist. That's a recognized point by the FDA for reducing symptoms of nausea.
Perfect. And pacemakers? There were a lot of
Yeah, pacemakers. We've had many people with pacemakers use the patches. Again, we haven't had any studies, but many people have used the patches with pacemakers and not had any type of adverse side effects. Again, if someone has that, they should speak with their doctor. But our experience has shown that it's not an issue.